My dear children, this is your English teacher Mrs. Pooja Singh, and I hope you all are doing well and all are fine at home. Today we are going to learn a chapter from Unit 3, and the name of the chapter is Two Stories of Flying. And this chapter is divided into two parts, and the first part of the chapter name is His First Flight. Now when I talk about his first flight, it is the seagull's first flight. Okay. Now seagull, as you can see in the picture, is a water bird. Now let us see what is happening to this little seagull. Now the seagull called to fly. Now basically the young seagull was alone on his ledge. Ledge is the upper higher surface area of a hill or a mountain. So his two brothers and sister had already flown away. Now when he wanted to fly, he could not do so. He was very much afraid of flying. Therefore, he failed to gather up all the courage to fly. Now because of this, he was very sad. His father and mother came near him. At this point in time, father and mother are playing a major role to motivate him, to instigate him. But with lot of motivation, still this did not work. He was feeling a little hesitant to fly. So what did they do? They tried to criticize him. So they adopted the opposite of motivation, which is a negative motivation. So they tried to rebuke him. Rebuked is to criticize. They even threatened him that if he did not fly, then he would die of hunger. But still he could not even move a little. Later on, the seagull can't fly. That was 24 hours ago. Since then he had, no one coming near to him. He had been watching his parents and brothers and sisters flying. His parents, teaching the brothers and sisters, perfecting them how to dive for fish on their own. They still called him to fly, but he couldn't. So parents were also encouraging him, brother and sister, they were also telling him, calling him to fly, but there was some hesitation in the mind of this seagull. Later on, heat increases. The sun was rising in the sky. He felt the heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall, so he was feeling very hungry. Now because of seeing this hunger, in this seagull, the mother reaches near him with food. Mother is very sympathetic towards the seagull, so she has got some food in her beak, and the seagull closed his eyes, standing on one leg. He had the other leg hidden under his wing because he was pretending to sleep. But his parents didn't look at him. Now, however, his mother was looking at him, though they were trying to not look at him, but still there was this mother who was looking at him from the corner of her eyes. Now he saw her tear at a piece of fish at her feet. Now what he could see his mother having a piece of fish, under her feet. He gave out a sound to get it. His mother replied in a sound and looked at him. So they are talking to each other. His mother picked a piece of the fish. She was standing opposite to him, and later on she flew across to him with it. He leaned out, tapping the rock with his feet. So he was standing on the ledge, so he was leaning down that Mama will come and give me this fish. His mother flew across, trying to get nearer to him. So the mother was still in the air with the fish in her beak, and she was flying. The sight of this food made him mad. So he got excited looking at the food, but he could not get at it. Why? Because the mother was still there, flying in the air, standing in front of him. She is flying, and she is not at all giving him the food. Now the dives for food. Now he is dying. I want that food. So the seagull waited a moment in surprise. He wondered why his mother did not come nearer. Why is my mother not coming near to me and giving me this food? Though she knows that from night he hasn't eaten anything. He was so mad with hunger that he dived at the fish. He fell outward with a scream and downwards into space. His mother had swooped upward, so he actually took a dive. As he passed beneath her, he heard the swish of her wings. So basically, looking at the food, looking for his hunger, to satisfy his hunger, he actually took that initiative to dive. And now this was his first flight that began. Then a great fear caught him. His heart stood still. He could hear nothing because it was his first flight. But it only lasted a moment. The next moment he felt his wings spread outwards. So he was actually feeling he is diving down. But now his wings are getting separated. It's moving outward. He felt the wind rushed against his breast feathers, and that was giving him a push to fly. Then it rushed under his stomach and against his wings. He was not falling headlong now. So basically he used to dive with his head first. And now he was soaring slowly, downward and upwards. He was no longer afraid. He could fly on his own. So right now he is flying on his own because of that food. So there was this joy of flight. The seagull gave out a joyous scream. He soared higher, calling ga ga ga. His mother gave out ga khol ha. Then his father flew over him screaming. Then he saw his brother and sister flying around him. They were roaring and diving. So children looking at this side, mother, father, brother, sister, they were all very happy. There was a lot of scream and sound made in the sky. So what was the scene around? Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly. And right now he could. So he commended himself to dive and soar. Soar is to rise up higher. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it. He saw a vast green sea beneath him. So his parents and his brother and sister had landed on this green surface of water ahead of him. They were also calling him to do the same, to dive and come down near the surface area in that green vast area. So he lands on the surface of the water. He dropped his legs to stand on the green sea, but his legs sank into it. He cried with fear. He tried to rise again, flapping his wings, but he was tired and weak with hunger. So his belly touched it. He sank no further. He was floating on it. Around him was his family, crying and praising him. They were very, very happy to see him flying. They were offering him scraps of dogfish, which is a variety of fish. He had made his first flight successfully. So, children, finally he learned how to fly. And nobody actually taught him. It was his instigation, that is the hunger, that instigated him to dive. So, in our life also, we sometimes hesitate to do a particular thing, but there is some motivation which is urging us from within to do something. So we have something in front of us, and then there is this urge to do something. So this was it for the first part of the chapter. Moving on to the next part of the chapter is the black aeroplane. This is again a very interesting chapter. Now there is some miracle that had happened in this journey. Now there is this author who is flying his Dakota aeroplane. Now Dakota aeroplane is a kind of military aeroplane, you can say. Now the author says that he was flying an aeroplane at 1 o'clock at night. So it was night time, 1 o'clock, and the moon was coming up in the east behind him. So the stars were shining in the clear sky above him. He was flying his old Dakota aeroplane over France back to England. So he was coming back to his place, which is England, from France. And he was dreaming of his holiday. He is thinking to have a wonderful breakfast with his family. He was looking forward to being with his family at the breakfast table. Then there is this call for Paris control. Now he decided to call Paris control. He then radioed it. He told it that he was on his way back to England. So there is this Paris control to whom he was informing that I am going back to my country. Paris control duly acknowledged it, and it advised him to turn 12 degrees west. So they were guiding him. Suddenly he sees a storm clouds. He duly turned to that direction as explained by the Paris control unit. Everything was going well. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind him that he has left. Then he saw the storm clouds. He looked like black mountains in front of him. That storm it was. Now he knew he could not fly up and over them. Difficult, very difficult, because it was so black and dark that he couldn't see anything properly. He didn't know for a moment what to do, so he got stuck in such a situation where he is not getting it what is to be done. Now he decided, if he decides to go back to Paris, but he also wanted to go back to home. If he decides to go to Paris, that will take another 150 kilometers to reach back. So he took the risk and flew into the storm. He could see nothing outside his aeroplane. It was completely dark. Everything was black. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air. And then he looked at the compass. So the compass was gone. It was not working at all. So he tried to contact the Paris control unit, but he couldn't contact it too. He was lost in the storm. So there was no communication, there was no direction, there was nothing. He is at lost now. Now, what happens during this time is he sees another aeroplane in those clouds. Then in the black clouds, he saw another aeroplane and it had no lights on its wings. So in the wings of the aeroplane, there was this another aeroplane where there was no lights on its wings. He could see it flying next to him in the storm. So this particular aeroplane was flying with him. He was glad to see another person. So he was happy that he is not alone to survive in this particular storm. So there is another person. So he felt a little exciting or little happy about it. He was saying to follow him. So the aeroplane, the newer aeroplane, the second aeroplane was telling him, the pilot who was sitting inside, to follow him. The author thought he was trying to help him, so he followed him. He flew for half an hour. He had fuel only to last for 5 to 10 minutes. So there he was also running, shortage of fuel. Now he began to feel a little frightened. Then he started to go down. So now the author was feeling a really, really miserable at this condition, because the fuel was also running out of it. He was lost in this storm, and there is this aeroplane who was the only hope that he would take him to a safer place. So finally what happens is, he saw that he was on the runway. When he was going downwards, he saw that he was on the runway. So finally he has landed it down. He looked for his friend in the black aeroplane. So the other aeroplane, he was following him. He looked that there was this friend to whom he can thank him. So he wanted to thank him, but the sky was empty. He went into the control tower. He asked a woman where he was. So finally he reached his particular place where he wanted to, and when he sees back, he couldn't find that black aeroplane. So he goes to the control room and then he inquires a woman sitting there. So he asked a woman where he was. She looked at him strangely and then she laughed. She told that there was no other aeroplane except this. So this is something which is like a magic. There was no other aeroplane running that day. It was the only aeroplane, this aeroplane, which the author was running. So it was the only one which was flying that day. So the author was in great surprise. So the author was wonderstruck to hear it. He wondered who had actually helped him to arrive there. So he saw another pilot sitting in that black aeroplane. Then who was it? He was without a compass or a radio. He did not have enough fuel also in his tank. Who was the pilot on that strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? So it is your imagination that what you would think. According to me, God must have sent one of his angel to help somebody. So it is always said that during any disastrous time, definitely God sends his omen or angels to help people, and definitely that might have happened, or maybe it was his imagination of somebody helping him out, seeking him advice. So it can be anything. Now you can think better, like what option you can think of, what would that black aeroplane be. There is no perfect yes and no to this particular question, but it depends upon your imagination, it depends on your belief. So everything is on your belief. In the first part also, there was this belief that I couldn't fly, I cannot fly, but finally he took a flight. In the second part also, there was this belief that I am now gone and I am lost, but definitely God is there to help us out with every difficult situation. And I hope at this point in time also, God will definitely help us to come out of this COVID 19. I hope you have understood this chapter. Thank you so much. In my next session, I'll be sending you notes for this chapter. Thank you, children. Have a nice time.